A young widow is ready to get back out there, but her first date goes sideways incredibly quickly. Let's talk about the new thriller, Drop. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new movie Drop. This is in theaters right now, and it is directed by Christopher Landon, son of Michael Landon, and we'll get into his horror history in just a moment. But this is another Blumhouse production. Jason Blum and his horror company, has given us some great movies, some bad movies, and everything in between. But they're the studio behind Megan. They keep touting that to us because of Megan 2.0 coming out this summer. At this point, they've done probably 15 or 20 movies since Megan. But in any event, we'll get to all of this here shortly and talk about Drop. But first, let me welcome you back to Dan Reviews It. If you are a subscriber already, thank you so much for that. Love it when you guys return and check out my stuff. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my new video drops. And you could like this video or comment below too. That stuff, of course, helps the channel out. All right, let's talk about Drop. So Megan Fahey plays Violet, who is a young widow, and she has a young son. I don't know if they say his age, but I'd say he's probably about 5 or 6. And her sister comes over and babysits so she can have this wonderful date. And her date is with Henry, played by Brandon Sklenar, who is from 1923, and he was in recently It Ends With Us, big hit last year. But anyway, the date keeps getting interrupted, and she keeps getting distracted because of a series of anonymous messages to her phone being dropped by someone in the restaurant. You may be familiar with airdropping. They talk about that. This is a different kind of drop that I think they made up for the movie, but you have to be within 50 feet. So it's obviously somebody in the restaurant with them that is making these things, but the instructions are telling her to not talk about the drops and to, do a series of things that she does not want to do, including potentially murder, all to save her son's life. So it is very, very sort of centered in one room. Yeah, we see the beginning, at her place and whatever. We meet the family, we meet the sister, we meet the kid. But once she gets to the restaurant, almost the entire rest of the movie takes place in that restaurant, specifically in the dining area. But we also go to the bathroom and go to the front, check-in area or whatever. But it's all sort of in that closed space, which I like. And it's also, for the most part, in real time. Once they get to the restaurant, it's in real time because she keeps, checking her phone and you see the time, or at some points we see her cameras set up inside her house, and those are time stamped as well. So it's in real time, which when that is done well, I really like it. So anyway, I mentioned Brandon Sklenar here as the date, but I never talked about Violet. So she's played by Megan Fahey, who was in Your Monster in the fall. It was an independent movie, but also kind of a thriller, a little bit of a romantic thriller, I guess you could say. I know her most from a freeform show called The Bold Type that lasted, 5 years or something, but she was one of the main stars of that. And between this and Your Monster, she may be making a name for herself in the thriller and horror world. I thought this was pretty interesting, to be honest. I really like movies that are in closed spaces, sort of one locale for most of the movie. And I love movies when they're done well in real time as well, because it really, makes you part of the action. You feel her desperation because as the minutes tick by, they're ticking by for us in the audience as well. And I think that when it's done well, it's fantastic. It's not always done well, but here I think they utilize that premise very, very nicely. The premise itself is interesting because it could certainly be realistic. I don't think this is one that you necessarily have to suspend your disbelief that much. I think most of what happens here would be what's happening if you were getting these drops as well. However, once we reveal who the culprit is, which is about maybe 20 minutes to the end. And we're not going to do spoilers here, do not worry. But once we finally reveal that, then the movie really goes off the rails. It becomes this sort of like tense actioner where all suspension of disbelief doesn't really exist anymore. I did not like that part. I say all the time that a bad ending can ruin an otherwise perfectly good film, or some sense of that. I say, but a good ending can also sort of elevate an average film. But in this case, I don't think it necessarily ruins the movie at all. But I will say it's by far the weakest part of the movie, because the drop stuff, the stuff with the two of them at the restaurant talking, and us as the audience were like, well, why isn't this guy leaving? Like, she's being kind of crazy, but at the same time, she's been instructed to keep him there, keep smiling and all this stuff. If he leaves the table, her kid dies. And so she has to really, really, put on her charm to keep him there. And so in that sense, everything sort of makes sense. And their chemistry is pretty good. You can see that he is a very nice dude, and she's just a lovely woman. And obviously, her excuse for being so frantic is, oh, it's, my first time away from my son in a while. It's my first date since I became a widow, X, Y, and Z. So her frantic nature makes sense within the context as well. And so they play very nicely off each other. But that last 15 to 20 minutes, we go from, this nice, believable scene that is mostly about the dialogue and the intensity building from within the characters to action movie. I didn't love it. Definitely it made the movie drop a bit for me. But everything else worked for me. Like, it's very sort of old school, Hitchcock a bit. There's like maybe a little Rear Window in there. It's definitely in that vein of those sort of classic part mystery, like who done it, who is this person doing it, but also the person having to deal with it, in this case the mother, not losing her cool, because otherwise bad things happen. So it's this tightrope that the character has to walk, and I think Megan Fahey portrays that perfectly. And then Christopher Landon, like I mentioned, I'll go back to him. So he directed this. He has directed and or written or co-written a lot of really great thriller and horror movies in the last 5 years or so, including both of the Happy Death Day movies. He wrote the second one, Freaky, which was a lot of fun, and a few other ones that maybe weren't as great. But this is Michael Landon's son, of course, for Little House on the Prairie and everything. And he actually was one of the producers of Heart Eyes, which came out earlier this year, which was an okay horror movie. So definitely he is entrenched in that world. And I think the Happy Death Day movies are Blumhouse as well. So if he's sort of in with the Blumhouse group, that could be a great pairing, because these movies, I love the Happy Death Day movies. And this one is right in that vein of, intense stuff. You don't exactly know what's going on. But I like the mystery element of this, and I like a lot of things about it. But boy, that ending doesn't ruin it, but definitely knocks it down a peg or two. So I leave Drop with a B. Not a bad thriller at all, and a good mystery too. Because they definitely had me fooled with who was the one doing the dropping, and the reason for it is interesting as well. But all right, that'll do it for now. Thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I'll see you next time.